Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Travel Royally podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Gordon Moir, who is the former director of greenkeeping at St. Andrews Links, and he's the author of a wonderful book called The Greenkeepers Tale. Gordon retired from his position at St. Andrews Links in 2018 after a career that saw him involved in the hosting of more than 37 championships, including 5 Opens. He was just the 8th person to hold that title of Director of Greenkeeping at St. Andrews since the first, who was old Tom Morris. And old Tom retired in 1904. Gordon's the son of a farmer from Fraserburgh, which is in the north of Scotland. He began his career at Fraserburgh in 1976. He attended Elmwood College for his training and very quickly moved through the ranks to the role of head greenkeeper, a role that he held for 10 years. And after that, he moved on to be the head greenkeeper at St. Andrews, the Eton course in 1991. Later, he became obviously the director of greenkeeping for the Links. And in 2021, Gordon became the president of the British and International Greenkeepers Association. Gordon, welcome. Did I miss anything?
I think you've got everything pretty well covered in there, Jeff. Good morning.
Well, that's a very robust CV, if I might say.
Thank you.
Now, Gordon, I'm going to start at the beginning. You grew up in Fraserburgh. How did you come to golf?
Well, I took up golf when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I had an uncle who'd been in a car accident. He was quite a good sports person, but he never played golf. So him and my stepfather decided to take up golf because that was something he could play. And I just tagged along, and then I began playing with my friends and got quite hooked on it. My first set of golf clubs, they weren't quite hickory clubs, but they were almost as old, the old wooden heads. And I actually played a lot of my early golf at a small club along the road from Fraserburgh called Inverallie. It wasn't quite so busy, so I would play a lot there on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how it all started.
Well, before we went on, I told you how I came to play at Fraserburgh. Bill Maitland, he and I were members of the golfing society, and I got a hold of him, and he took me out. And I absolutely loved the course. We had a wonderful day on the links, and it was a very friendly membership. He hosted me afterwards in the clubhouse, and we had a wonderful time. And so tell us what it was like growing up on that course in the 70s, being able to play just a fantastic, most of us can't even imagine being able to play a course as beautiful and as challenging as Fraserburgh every day.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great facility because they had these 4 holes in front of the clubhouse, which you could always nip onto. They were the last 4 holes in the original course. The course actually changed just before I started working there, and those 4 holes then became an academy holes. But back in the 70s, it was a very progressive club, I would have said. There was quite a bit of money in the town. The fishing industry was doing really well, and all the little industries at the back of that, engineering and such like.
Right.
So they were pretty progressive. I mean, I remember they were one of the first clubs in that area, or even Scotland, to have a ride on Greensmoor back in the early 70s.
Wow.
And also one of the first clubs to have an automatic irrigation system. That wasn't always a good thing, because I think the tendency was then that just to throw in too much water, and it really did change the character of the course.
Yeah.
Which was something I discovered and learned about once I became head greenkeeper there. But yeah, and that system was only replaced last year, I think, or it was upgraded last year. So,
well, I'll tell you what else is interesting, Gordon, and that is the course was founded in the 1700s, and it's it's the 7th oldest course in the world, and one of only a handful that are from the 17th century, or the 1700s, I should say, which is just amazing to me. And I've got I don't. People hopefully they can see.
Yeah.
This is the 10th hole behind me at Fraserboro. I'm trying to make you feel at home, and I've got a
Yeah.
St. Andrews. I know you can't see this. The St. Andrews
I
coffee
did
shop,
recognize that as well.
but I can't say enough good things about Fraserboro. Now, after that, you went on to study at Elmwood, which is really quite famous in the UK for turning out greenskeepers. As a matter of fact, I didn't say this at the beginning, but he's coming to us live from the Murray Clubhouse in Lossiemouth, Scotland, the club that I'm a member of. And Kevin Thompson, who's our head greenkeeper, went to Elmwood as well. So
Yeah.
tell us about Elmwood. So,
Well, Elmwood, greenkeeping education in the UK, certainly in Scotland, probably only started up in the 1960s, early 1970s. And Elmwood, it's only 10 miles along the road from St Andrews.
right.
And Walter Woods, who was one of my predecessors at St Andrews, he was pretty instrumental in setting that up at Elmwood. Him and another few guys of his age group started the whole education program, really.
Yeah.
So it was being along the road from St Andrews was ideal because you would go along to St Andrews and you would get a flavour of things on a much bigger scale. But I mean, although it was a start, it was still quite basic. I mean, it was only a block release, so I would go 3 times a year. I would go for 2 week blocks, stay on the premises, and then we'd go back a further week for exams. And you did that for 3 years, and that was really the nub of your education.
Yeah. Yeah. How many students are there? I mean, because it seems like I hear about people greenkeepers who went to Elmwood. They're all over the UK. I know, particularly in Scotland, but I've heard of them being down in England and Ireland as well.
Yeah, there was a time there probably from the mid 70s through until the 1990s where it was hugely popular. Most of the people that attended were working as greenkeepers on golf courses, and they would go for that 7 weeks. And then as it's developed, they would be running full-time courses for a year, maybe 2 years. But now it's mostly online courses that they do. Just the way the world's evolved, but certainly in Scotland. But I knew people at Elmwood would come up from some top clubs in England. They used to get a lot of Icelandic and other Scandinavian pupils come across and students come across. So it was a good mix of people.
Yeah. Well, you've got a unique perspective on golf, and I say that because you've been playing golf for 50 years or so. But in addition to that, the background of having been a greenkeeper and getting courses set up for Open Championships is unique. But so I want to talk about your move back to Fraserboro. What was your motivation to return home, and how did you come to get the job at Fraserboro?
Well, as I say, I was always working there right through my apprenticeship, and it was quite strange. Fraserboro is a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, really, and they always struggled to get a good quality head greenkeeper or superintendent. And the first one I worked for was really just a farmer who had got into a certain age where there was only a small farm and he retired, and he became head greenkeeper. So he was on his own on the farm, so he had no man management skills.
Yeah.
Farming is very different from greenkeeping because they're wanting to produce a crop, whereas we're wanting the grass to grow really slowly and that. So he left after a couple of years, and then they couldn't find someone, and they actually took back a person who had worked there previously, but had no formal education. So again, and didn't play golf, so had very little knowledge of greenkeeping, and also had a big alcohol problem. So he left under a cloud one day, and I was partly involved in that because he would go drinking on an afternoon, and one Friday it was the beginning of summer. It was the beginning of June, and one Friday, him and the other two staff had worked along with us. There was four of us at the time. The three of them went drinking and left me to do some pretty mundane tasks. And when they come back at finishing time, um, they had asked me, there was a moor missing, a small, a hover moor, fly moor.
Yeah.
And they asked me where it was, and I said, well, it's at the far end of the golf course, hiding in the dunes because it's broken. And I had no way of transporting it the mile and a half back. I wasn't going to carry it. So he got a bit upset at that, and he had a bit of falling out with me. And I said, well, I'm going to wait to play golf. And then he followed me, and I'd left my club sitting outside the pro shop, and I'd gone to grab a sandwich. I came back out, and I noticed one of my clubs was broken in two. And I asked the pro what had happened. And he says, oh, your boss came and took it out the club, out your bag, and snapped it over his knee. So, and then by that time he was back in the bar drinking. So I went and challenged him, and he was wanting to fight. And I just walked away, and I phoned the captain of the golf club, and he and the other two members of staff got fired on the spot. So there I was in the middle of June, and I was the only person left to work on the golf course. And they couldn't get anybody to take the job. So after about 4 months, they gave it to me. So they got me a couple of helpers for the summer. So it was a sort of baptism of fire a little bit.
Wow.
So yeah,
well, you had to deal with some characters at St. Andrews as well that were on your staff. I read very humorous. Well, it's humorous now. It may not have been humorous at the time, but we'll come to that.
Yeah.
So now you take over at Fraserburgh. So it's a big job, right? I mean, it's a full length. It's a big woolly piece of property. What types of improvement? Well, and I want to say this, Gordon. I can imagine being an underling. You've got to be thinking while you're there working for a guy who really doesn't know what's going on, the types of improvements that you would make and the things that you would do differently. So what types of improvements did you undertake when you were at Fraserburgh?
Well, I mean, I did the normal thing, like we would build new tees, and actually I did add a number of bunkers over the years, fairway bunkers in particular. But
so I've got you to thank for my miserable round.
Yeah, absolutely. I have myself to thank for my miserable rounds when I go back sometimes. But I think the biggest thing initially was when I got in charge, and the greens were very, very soft and pitch marks, and they were terrible through the winter. But as I was going around and meeting other greenkeepers and getting more education through the association, really, everybody was talking about links greens being really firm and fast. And as I mentioned to you before we came on air, part of the reason was the irrigation system. And everybody was wanting more irrigation on, so it was a big job to try and explain to the members and the committee that this is not how the greens should be. And we got an agronomist came up and did a presentation to the members. And Jim Arthur was his name, very, very, very famous agronomist, did all the Open Championship venues and everything. And so for a year and a half after that, I literally put on no water on the greens, and we would slit them every week. And they were really terrible, and people were wanting me hung from the nearest tree. Thankfully, there's not a lot of trees. There are no trees on the site. But after that first 15 months, things really, really improved quickly as well.
Yeah.
And that because I was on the verge of thinking I need to go and get another job here, but I could hardly play golf because I couldn't go into the golf course and into the clubhouse afterwards because people were at me. But when they did start to improve, they really improved drastically, and so that was one big thing I did. And then the course had just been redesigned just before I started working in '76, and there were 6 new holes, and of those 6 new holes, five were brand new greens, and they had a different composition than the existing greens.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a struggle to get them improved. In fact, I actually ended up rebuilding 3 of those greens, The other two, well, I was able to change round just by maintenance, but we had to rebuild. Two were in actually two new locations
Yeah.
and one in the same location. So
Now,
yeah,
when you go back to Fraserboro, Gordon, it must be I don't know what the right term would be. Maybe it's rewarding to see, walking along the course and see changes that you made 40 years ago that are still there, bunkers that you put into place, or new tees, or
yeah,
it must give you a sense of pride to see that.
yeah. I do, and I don't go back often enough, to be honest. My family, all my family, have kind of most of my family are dead. I've got a few cousins, but like my parents are dead and things like that. So I don't go back that often. Maybe a couple of times a year. But I love going back and playing there and playing in Veralchi with friends I used to play with, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, again, I read your book. It was fantastic. And it's an interesting story how you moved to St. Andrews. Can you share the story of how you got your job at St. Andrews?
Yeah, I just felt I had done so much at Fraser, but it was really difficult to do. Well, we've got a fly past, Jeff.
Oh, I can't hear it, but
Okay, that's
yeah, for
okay.
people that aren't familiar with Murray, there's the RAF Lossiemouth base right there. And if you're out there on the course, they fly over a couple of 100 feet over your head, and you have to hold your ears. And we've got landing lights on the course to help guide them at night to the landing. So that's
That's
fun.
that's the second one going up.
Well, you've got a prime view there. I
Yeah,
mean, you're in a great, you and right over where Stevie sits there's a great view there
yeah. I'm just in the room next door.
yeah.
So, um, yeah. So, yeah. But I felt I'd taken Fraser as far as I could, and and although most of the membership were great, there's always, and I think it's the same in every golf club. There's 20 guys or 20 people on your back all the time, and also my kids were growing up, and I thought we wanted to go somewhere, you know, nicer for them to grow up and go to school. So I started looking around, and I applied for a job down near London, quite a reasonably well-known club, and had quite a few professionals played out of there on a European tour. And I went down for an interview, and when I actually turned up down there, the course wasn't particularly good, but I was coming out to the interview, and I was meeting the next candidate going in. It was a Scottish guy who I knew, and long story short was I didn't get the job, but he did, and he moved. He was at the club at Crail, which is just 10 miles along the road from St Andrews. So he moved from Crail, and the guy in charge of the Eden course got his job at Crail. And then I knew Walter Woods through being involved in the Greenkeeping Association. I thought, well, I'll just throw my hat into the ring here, and I'll hopefully get an interview for just the fact I knew Walter. So I did get an interview, and then lo and behold, got offered the job. So that was how I come to move at St Andrews. It was all about a merry-go-round, as these things are.
That's fantastic. And you know what, Gordon, I think most people that go to St. Andrews visitors don't play the Eden course. And I don't know if I told you this, but a couple of years ago, my girlfriend and I moved. Well, I don't want to say we moved there. We lived for the summer in St. Andrews for 3 months. And I could have played the old course every day because it was at the tail end of the pandemic, and you had to have a 10-day quarantine and all that. So there were no
Oh yeah,
visitors there, right? I could have played the old course every day. The course I played the most was Eden, and it's. I'm not going to say it's as difficult as the other courses, but it's beautiful. It's well laid out. There's some amazing holes. It's got the only hole in St. Andrews of the 7 with a lake on it or a pond on it.
yeah. Well, Tom Watson was over for 3 months last year, doing a lot of the. He did a lot of the patrons days for the R&A for the Open,
Uh-huh.
and he had never played the Eden before, and he went out one Saturday morning with some members of the new club, and he reckoned the front nine in the Eden. was as good a 9-hole stretch as any,
Yeah.
because it's the original cool design, and the low handicappers in town don't like the Eden because they find it too tricky. If you miss the green, it's really difficult to get up and
Yeah.
down. The back nine's not such an interesting nine, and I always wanted to redevelop the green complexes there. And, I kind of had made a tentative start
Well, you did.
before
Didn't
I
you replace
retired.
a green? Was it the fifth green that you replaced, or I know you replaced?
Yeah, we dug the green up, and there was a problem with the soil underneath.
Right.
So we did just exchange the soil. There was just a layer stopping water getting away. So we did that. So we didn't really change the green itself that much.
Yeah.
We put it back to the same shapes and contours,
Yeah.
pretty much, but we just put in a new root zone.
But you also redid the 18th hole, didn't you?
Um,
Or
well, we returfed some of the greens at once upon a time, against my better judgment. I didn't want to do it, but I was ordered to. But yeah, the new holes on Eden, we put in some bunkers into them, but they could really be done. I think the holes themselves are nice. They just need some more features in them. The routing's okay. I don't mind the routing. Just need some new features.
yeah, I think I think having played all those courses at St. Andrews, I mean, I really like the Eden. I think it's I think you summed it up. It's missing some features that could make it more interesting and more challenging. But I thoroughly enjoy the walk along the Eden and playing it, and it's got some very
Yeah.
memorable holes.
Oh yeah, and there's some really short holes, and I mean drivable par fours, but
Yeah.
but by no stretch of the imagination are they easy.
Yeah. There's a hole now. I'm forgetting the number of it, but it's right along the path, and it's a canted green from left to right. I mean, it's a fairly sizable green, and it cants heavily from left to right. I remember being a particularly hard green to get up and down from. I don't remember
But
the number of it.
there are so many greens in that front nine. The first itself is a sort of pretty unique green.
Yeah.
Um,
So, well, I think it's interesting, Gordon, that you took that job very seriously, obviously, right? I mean, you put in a lot of effort to improve the Eden course. How did the work your work, I should say, at Fraserburgh prepare you for what needed to be done on the Eden and to the links in general?
well, I don't think anything at Fraserburgh did prepare me for going to St Andrews. I mean, I was quite naive, and it was a shock to move there to such an iconic place. There were so many differences. Um, even the sand was different. It compacts much more in St Andrews than it does, or it did at Fraserburgh. Um, I think and at Fraserburgh as well, everybody knew you. So maybe that's one of the things that did prepare me, because if you messed up in Fraserburgh, not just the golfers, but everyone in the town knew you. And if you messed up, or were doing something you shouldn't have been doing,
Yeah.
then you were kind of finished, really. So I think character building and such like that was helped me, and then because down at St Andrews, especially the different, I was a head greenkeeper, and the more senior staff, people knew us, but a lot of the normal green staff, nobody knew them. They didn't play golf. They didn't go into the golf club. The members didn't know them, so they had no real pride in their work. What I found, and that was one of the things I found really difficult, because I mean, I love to play golf, and I love to go in for a beer after the golf as much as the golf itself, and chatting to guys. So I was wanting my golf course to be as good as it possibly could be, for my sake as much as anything else.
Right.
But a lot of the guys in the staff, they really didn't care.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I found that really difficult.
Well, based on reading the book, excuse me, I think there are three things that stand out that I think that you brought to the greenkeeping crew: discipline, innovation, or a sense of progressiveness, and a commitment to excellence. Do you agree with that?
Um, yeah, I do to an extent. I mean, I certainly didn't do it all on my own. I mean, I had a lot of help and a lot of support, and it took a long time. But yeah, I would like to think that by the time I retired, I'd certainly moved the whole place on a lot. I'd have liked to move on further. But yeah, it was yeah, I would have said those were three things. I mean, greenkeeping itself had progressed so much, and I just felt that we were such an iconic place, and everybody was watching us, and I just felt that we needed to be at the forefront of changes, and
Right.
you know, um,
Yeah. Well, I think though, when I think about what you did there, you had a staff at the time, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way so much, that it was kind of a ragtag bunch of people working under you, right? There were people, like you said, people who didn't play golf, didn't care, who didn't take their job seriously, who would fall asleep on the course or hide and not do what they were supposed to do. And I think you raised the level of professionalism and the expectations of what was needed to make all of those courses great while you were there.
yeah. I mean, I had some funny experiences. I mean, and I learned pretty quickly. Some of the better staff would tell you some of the things to watch out for. For instance, you would send off guys with a mower to maybe cut down. I think you call it a weed whacker
Yeah.
to cut down some long grass and things like that. So they would take the petrol and they would pour the petrol out underneath a bush, and then they would have to drive all the way back to base to get more petrol, or they would take the spark plug off and they would knock it on a stone and close the gap, and then the mechanic to come out and find out what was wrong with the machine because it wouldn't start. And of course, the mechanic they had a they knew which things to look for because it was the same thing all the time. And how did that gap close? Oh, I don't know. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was things like that. But even things like managing the gorse, that nice prickly weed that grows in the rough and things.
Right.
They didn't want to do that because you would often come in for some criticism because you were changing things.
Yeah.
So the golfers, the committees didn't like that, and they didn't want to come in for criticism. So guys were reluctant to do anything for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a battle to change things.
Well, Gordon, if you look out the window behind you, there's a lot of gorse at Murray. Is it in full yellow bloom at the moment?
It is, yeah, it is. It smells lovely as well. It's got a lovely coconut smell.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think for people from the States who haven't been over and experienced gorse, it's an experience. Right? I mean, I think a lot of people would see their ball, their ball might be visible in the gorse and might stick their hand in to get it, which would obviously be a mistake. But wow.
Yeah,
I love
invasive.
Scotland when in the spring when the gorse is blooming. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. That 6 week spell we get from now until end of June, or beginning of June. It's yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
But it is so invasive. It spreads like wildfire.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't mean to talk about this, but I've read a lot about the history of St. Andrews, and I know that old Tom um, took out a huge amount of gorse by hand
Yeah,
back in the 1800s and really cut it back to make the course more playable. Maybe this afternoon after we're done, you could go out on Murray and by hand remove some of that gorse that I find so troubling.
they've whacked back quite a lot here over the last few years.
Yeah.
They're very generous here. If you go in an area where it's whacked back, you get this ground under repair. At St Andrews, we just said, well, kind of yourself lucky because last week you'd have lost your ball.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, let's move on to some of the bigger projects that you did. And when I say bigger projects, you prepared the Oak Course for 5 Open Championships. What did you do, or how was preparing the course for an Open Championship different from just preparing it for standard play? And I asked that, Gordon, because every time I'm there, it looks like it's ready to host a championship on any given day.
Well, yeah, that is a kind of thing that we do say. It's really not that different on a day-to-day basis than an Open Championship. So, I mean, obviously, setting up for an Open or a European Tour event, we would work very closely with the RNA in the lead up to it. So it would just be your timing of when you would top dress or aerate or fertilize. Um, those are the things you would need to watch out for. And then as you get closer to the tournament, it's just a case of increasing your frequency of cut. Um, greens are cut every day as a standard anyway, but in the lead up to the Open, then we would maybe cut twice a day, or you would change the height of cut just to try and get everything so consistent.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, we'd try, but every day we've got people playing the old course, and for them it's their Open Championship. They've saved up a lifetime to come and play, so we want to try and give them the best experiences we possibly can. And we're also very fortunate. We've got so many tournaments that the staff always knew what they were doing. They knew what was expected of them. They knew the rules. So that was, from that point of view, that was reassuring. You weren't worrying about somebody not knowing what to do or doing something
Yeah.
wrong. So that was good. But then, of course, the other big thing with the Open in particular is it's all the stuff that goes along with the Open, the infrastructure,
Right.
the contractors coming on site, and they were sometimes a worry because they would, you were worried they would drive somewhere they shouldn't or they would damage. The RNA were very good, having them under control and explaining the rules to them and what they could do and couldn't do and keeping them right. And the TV crowds were different.
Yeah.
I had a few run-ins with TV crowds.
Yeah. Well, I can't even imagine because those crews start arriving, some of them 6 months in advance. It gets really busy 3 months in advance. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, if you haven't been to an Open there, and I've fortunately been to two, a lot of the infrastructure is set up on the other courses.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it doesn't just impact the old course, it impacts all of them. And then, when the TV people get there, they're installing cameras into bunkers, and it's got to be very intrusive.
They're always last minute as well, so they're always driving everywhere. They were always a problem, and I mean, I guess we've always been pretty lucky over the years that there haven't been more people end up in bunkers and buggies than there has been.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, there's a photograph in your book of a car in a woman drove.
Well, we've got a car and a buggy, and quite often there's been the odd occasion where green staff have ended up in a bunker either with a mower or a buggy or a tractor, just because they've got too close and some of the slopes they've just slid. It's been a little bit greasy on the surface, and they've just slid down the slope. Yeah. So we've been fortunate. We've had no really scary accidents.
Well, Gordon, the other thing that you had to prepare for every year, other than the Masters, where they play a tournament there every year, there are very few courses that host a professional tournament every year. And the Dunhill Links Championship, which plays over Kings Barnes, Carnoustie, and the Old Course. So you had to have a course ready to play a professional event every September or October, and that had to be a challenge as well.
It was. I mean, certainly the infrastructure for the Dunhill is nothing like the Open. I mean, they have a hospitality pavilion, which is actually off the golf course behind the wall, behind 17 Green. And they've got very little on the course itself. I mean, TV towers and such like, and that is about it. Um, it's at the end of the season, so the greens are generally a little bit more forgiving. They're a little bit softer.
Yeah.
They have amateurs playing it, so the pin placements the first 3 days are very central just to get people around the golf course. And that's why you get such good scoring as well. The pins aren't tucked away like they are at the Open.
Yeah.
The weather can be sometimes inclement.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's the spectators are quite minimal. The good thing about the Dunhill is it generally comes right at the back of the RNA autumn meeting. So the staff have been busy preparing the golf course for 2 weeks for the RNA to, pretty much the same standard. In fact, exactly the same standard. And the good thing is there's been much less golf than normally you would have.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You said something a moment ago that spurred a thought with me. In 1999, the Open was at Carnoustie. And the greenkeeping staff there came under great scrutiny for the condition of the course, meaning that the fairways and greens were in marvelous condition, but the rough had gotten out of control. What impact did that have on you in terms of preparing St. Anthony, the old course, for tournaments? That had to be, at the time, Gordon, that had to be a massive discussion in your profession about what happened at.
It was a shame because Carnoustie probably, the condition of the golf course, as you say, the greens and the tees and the fairways were probably as good as any Open Championship had ever been. And that fact was completely ignored just because the rough was so brutal. Funnily enough, just an aside, Paul Laurie was at Royal Dornoch on Friday getting honorary membership, and I happened to be up visiting my son, and we went along, and he spoke about his Open win. So, but yeah, to go back to your question, I wasn't in charge of the 2000 Open on the old course, and it was quite a dry summer, so there really wasn't that much rough. But ever since then, we've had a lot of discussion with the RNA on the roughs, and in particular at 17, because it was always a bit lush and thick and brutal. We've been working. We worked hard from 2005 to 10 to 15, and they're still working on it at the moment. I mean, this last autumn and spring, they've cut it all back down again, and they've scarified it, and it's quite bare and thin at the moment.
Well, I know you've heard this. The 17th is the par 4 that's often called the hardest par 5 in golf.
Yeah.
That is, if you get into the rough when it's up over there on the left, I mean, there's no chance of getting that ball on the green. I mean, I guess you could get it kind of front right or back left.
I mean, the pros are so strong, they can advance it down towards the front of the green and things like that. But we're just trying to get out us mere mortals. But it is interesting if you look back at Seve when he won in '84. He was in that rough, and it was so dry that summer. He had a 6-iron. It was just a puff of sand went up when he got it onto the green.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I mean, some of the people used to say, and you quite often I see this debate in architectural magazines and books about how there used to be even less rough between the holes on the front nine and the back nine of the old course, and the theory being that the further left you go in 17, then the tougher, the more challenging the second shot that brings the bunker into play. But I think the worry now is the guys hit it so far they can throw it up in the air with their second shot. They don't have to run it on anymore to 17. They can throw it up and land it in the top plateau.
Yeah. Well, you would have been there when they moved the tee back, correct? They moved it off the course.
Yeah, I was involved in that decision to a small extent, because Peter Dawson had always spoken about it, but never thought it could be possible. And I said to him one day, I said, I think we could move that tee back. It might mean moving the road, the old railway line, but I think we could do it. And he said, I said, come out and have a look one day. And we set a we set a trailer up to take it up to the height it would be. And he goes, oh yeah, okay, I'm kind of half convinced. And it was just coming up to the Dunhill, so he said, could you do that for the Dunhill during the practice days? And he wanted to get canvas opinion from a couple of pros that he really trusted.
Yeah.
And I went out with one of them, and he went out with the other, and to see what they thought, and they both gave it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So that was how it ended up being built.
Yeah. That's fantastic. You know, I have to tell you something, Gordon. I had a gentleman on from Kentucky recently, and he had played St. Andrews for the first time a couple of years ago, and he can't wait to get back. But he went with two of his buddies. They got in through the lottery onto the Oak course, and they got put with another American, a guy from California. And on 17, the guy from California he had a terrible hook. So he'd been fighting that all day and had changed his swing so it produced a slice. And he would hit the ball, he'd swing quite hard and the ball would go a long way, but not always where he intended. So they got up to the 17th tee, not the further back one, but where members and visitors play from. And he took a mighty whack and he hit it up and over the hotel into the parking lot. Right. And the caddies with them said they had never seen that before. And when I was there this past summer, I went over, or excuse me, I was there in February, not last summer, in February. I went to that tee box and I thought I couldn't hit it that far right if I tried. I mean, that's 120 or 140 yards offline.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, anyway, I found that.
I think I think I think there's a lot of people are so nervous on that tee. It's amazing where balls will finish up.
Yeah.
And on 18, I've seen people going up the other street, not just the street up the side of the golf course, but up the other street, up the main road into town.
That's crazy. Well, Gordon, I've been to St. Andrews 27 times. I've spoken with locals a lot about the courses there. I personally think the old course is the best, but I've heard a lot of people say that the new is their favorite and Jubilee's the hardest and the old course is the most historic. What are your feelings on that?
I would say that is probably the majority of the feeling in town. A lot of people like the new course because all the bailout areas are on the right, or most of them are on the right, and most people slice, so it's more forgiving.
Yeah.
The Jubilees is certainly it can be a brute. Those last 5 or 6 holes can be, just bogey your way in. I think the Castle now is the hardest course, but the Jubilee next. A lot of the older guys they like playing the Eden. It's shorter. The old is still the preferred one. I think the fact it's going to take you 5 hours to go around puts a lot of the locals off.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something. You said something a second ago that I didn't intend on talking about, but I want to talk about that because in the book it's fascinating how the Castle Course came about and your role in that, both during its construction and after, dealing with the effects of a lot of criticism, particularly about the greens.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a funny story. Well, I guess you'll be the judge whether it's funny or not, but we were over there probably a year before it was set to open. We didn't know what it was, but we drove by it. And we were probably coming back from Crail or Kingsbarns along the road there. And we pulled in. And I've got this 9-passenger van, and we pulled in on a service road, right, which is now the main road. And we were making and then we decided, well, we're done here. Let's turn around. and we drove onto the grass, or right, and whoever was there supervising the construction around where we were came screaming at us like, "Get off of there! Get off of there!" Um, but tell us about your role in that course, during the construction and, well, before, during, and after, really.
Well, I think from my point of view, the most important things that we got right was we got a superintendent employed right at the start to
Right.
work for us through the project. So and built a team up and took ownership. I think that was important. We were able to convince the management and the committees to spend a little bit extra money and sand cap around the greens and the approaches to the greens, so it would play like a links, because it's not built on sand. There were
Right.
some sandy areas on the side, but most of it's quite heavy. So that was things we got right. I think. Now I wish now, looking back, we could have reined the architects in a little bit more. We did rein them in a bit,
Yeah.
but I wish we'd reined them in more, so there was less criticism in the greens, because that's the one the one area we get criticism on now. Still, we
Yeah.
still get we still get a lot of positive comments, but if there are people who don't like it, it's the green shapes.
Well, the
So
greens have been changed considerably since then, right? Because when
well,
it opened,
yeah,
they were quite severe.
we never really changed the greens themselves, because it's so difficult to do, because they're all USGA construction. But what we've done over the years was we've changed the surrounds, because a lot of them are tabletop, and there was no bailout, there was no backstop. So we've put in backstop, so the ball is at least stopping on the same level as the green, and you've not got a green 10 yards above you, and you're chipping right across the green down a slope to the other side. So we've sort of tried to take the triple bogey or worse off the
Yeah.
scorecard.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'll tell you what, Gordon, I think that I have a very fond spot in my heart for the Castle course. I like it. And I think that when I think about holes that are memorable, there are a lot of memorable holes. I really like 9. I like the finishing stretch, 16, 17, 18. 18 is a great finishing hole. I love the shared green with
yeah,
9
yeah.
and 18. And I think I love 17. I love, from a visual perspective, hitting over that cove, and it's, I know there's if you hit left of the green, typically it's gonna roll over onto the green, which is fine.
Uh,
But it's a gorgeous par 3.
I think if the more you play it, and the more there's a lot of room off the tee. It doesn't always look like that, but there's a lot of room off the tee. So if you can, once you play a few times, you know a sort of safe route, and you can plot your way around that way. And you might not score that great, but you won't score horrendously. But a
Yeah.
lot of people, I think one thing is, a lot of people, they only come and they only play it once, and it's, from that point of view, it's a very difficult course to play and score on. You need to play it a few times, just like you do with the old. The
Yeah.
more you play the old, the more you understand it, and it doesn't get any easier. So
Yeah, that's true. Now, Gordon, I know you've got a soft spot in your heart for the Eaton course because you spent so much of your time there and did so much work there. But what's your favorite course of the 7 in St. Andrews?
I'm probably still going to say the old. I mean, I kind of fell out of favour with Eden a little bit, but now that I'm getting older and not hitting the ball so far, I quite like playing it again now.
Yeah, I
So,
hear
but yeah,
you.
I mean, if you get the chance to play the old, I think I would take it.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing, Gordon, that comes out in the book, you got the opportunity to travel quite a bit to the U.S. You played a lot of the best golf courses in the United States. There's some very funny stories about your visits to the Master. Well, I wouldn't say funny, interesting stories about meeting the greenkeeping staff at the Masters. The trip that you went to New Orleans, and these are wonderful stories. I really do encourage everyone to buy the book. It's available on Amazon, by the way, The Greenkeepers Tale. We'll put a link to it when we post this, Gordon. But What's your favorite course in the world?
Oh boy, that's putting me in the spot. I mean, I think you're
Okay,
right. I
let's
mean,
say other than one of the courses at St. Andrews or Fraserborough,
I've,
what would be
I've,
your favorite course?
I mean, I've been so lucky to get the opportunity to play so many courses. And I hate having one favorite, but you know, some of the greatest ones I've played. I mean, Pine Valley and Cypress Point, Royal Melbourne are all up there. Um,
Now you're just name dropping. You're making
yeah, yeah. But you know, I I just love so many other. Even we spoke earlier about some of the little courses around this part of
yeah.
Scotland, like Darness and Ray and Wick up in the very north, and Fraserburgh and some of the other courses around Fraserburgh. Um, some of the ones around, okay, you can go and play Turnberry and Troon and Prestwick, but you know, courses like Glasgow Gales, Western Gales, um, are just as
Preston
fun.
St.
And
Nick's,
next to Muirfield, you've got Gullen, you've got Lough Ness, you've North Berwick and Dunbar, um,
Kilspindie.
and Kilspindie. And I mean, I mean, I'd quite happily just drive along the coast here, along to Fraserburgh, down to Peterhead, and then into Aberdeen. And I might not always go and play Croon Bay because that certainly isn't my favourite. A lot of people love it, but it's not one I never particularly liked it. I think it's maybe because I very seldom played well there, but you know, it always got an influence, hasn't it?
Well, okay. So, what is your favorite course? You've been avoiding the question very diplomatically, I might say.
Probably Pine Valley.
Yeah, yeah,
I've played it a couple of times, and both times I've played there, I've played well.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that's good. Well, I'll tell you what. We didn't talk about this beforehand, really, to the extent that maybe we could have. But one of the things that I did mention is that we like to get, our guests when they travel over there to play some of the different courses, not just the trophy courses like
mhm.
St. Andrews and Carnoustie, but places like Murray or Fraserborough. 2 years ago, no, I take that back. Last summer, I played Cullen
Oh,
and Fortrose and Rosemarkie for the first time.
yeah.
And at Cullen, it was a Sunday morning. We had a 9:40 tea time. We arrive at 9:20. They don't even open till 10. So we couldn't get trolleys. And we weren't going to lug our bags up and down those hills. So we decided to play a 6 club challenge, the 4 of us.
All
Right?
right.
Well, actually, there were 5 of us. So we played as a 5-some. There was no one there. And I'm telling you, it was the most fun I've had playing golf in maybe ever, but certainly in many years. It was so much fun. Those holes are so unique and so different from anything that we have here. Blind shots, 100, 200
Yeah.
feet straight uphill and downhill part. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, and it's so playable and it's so natural.
Yeah,
Have you played Spey Bay?
I haven't.
Yeah,
And it's right
that's another
near,
little.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Spey Bay, and then on the other side of the river you've got Garmouth and Kingston.
I haven't played there. I played in that area. I played, other than the 2 at Murray, Hopeman, Nairn Dunbar, Cullen. I haven't played Spey Bay, but I've and I haven't. I've heard good things about Cove Sea.
Yeah, it's a good fun little 9 hole course. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty rough and ready, but some interesting holes there. Yeah,
yeah. So
and Elgin's such a good course as well.
yeah, yeah. I've got friends that are members of Elgin, and I've been going. I've been a member there for 15 years. I haven't. As a matter of fact, I have to call Stevie after we talk to pay my subscription. I'm a little late on that, but I've got to pay that today.
I'm sure. I'm sure they want to worry as long as they get the money.
So let me ask this. I didn't intend to ask this one either, but what's on your golf bucket list? Is there a course you definitely want to play that you haven't played?
Yeah, but there's been yeah, I've played a lot of the nice courses in Ireland, but there's still quite a few I haven't played. and I wouldn't mind going back and playing there. It's just finding the time.
Yeah.
So some over on the West Coast and some in the Dublin area. But yeah, and there was somewhere else actually, but I can't remember where it is. But yeah, I could spend the rest of my I'd manage to find new courses every day for the rest of my life and still enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, when you get to Ireland over on the West Coast, if you haven't played much over there, Rossapena has 3 fantastic links. The newest one, St. Patrick's, is I forget the ranking, but it's in the top 100 already.
Yeah, we were due to go to Rossapena one year. We were over in Sligo and we're going to go to Rossapena the last day, but the forecast was rain was moving in and it was coming in from that area, so we stayed and played another game at Sligo and just got finished. That was before that St. Patrick's course was open. It was only 36 holes in.
And Nairn and Portneuf has been redone, and I understand that's fantastic as well. So,
sorry, which one?
Nairn and Portneuf.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I've never been there. So,
now I've got another question. Again, this comes from the book, but you've played with a lot of pros and celebrities. Who's your favorite with whom to play golf of all those people?
Well, I haven't really played with that many. I mean, I enjoyed playing in the pro-am with Katrina Matthews. She was probably much more engaging than a lot of them are.
Yeah.
I think I really enjoyed Barry Lane's company. I was lucky enough to he was the other pair in my team in the Dunhill year I played in the Dunhill. So we had 3 rounds with Barry Lane, and him and his wife, and he was really nice. He unfortunately died just towards the end of last year, quite young. I think he was only early 60s.
Yeah.
But he was encouraging and polite and helpful, and New Year's and graces. He wasn't a really. He was taking the competition seriously, but he was able to communicate and chat. And sometimes some of these guys, and you can understand it. They're doing their job, but they're not too talkative.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, final question. What in your golf life are you most proud of?
Oh, Jeff, come on. You just need to walk in the door at Murray Golf Club and you see my name up in the honours board there. It was a long time ago, but it's there and it'll never come off.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah. It's very difficult to. Yeah, obviously, really proud of the Opens and being involved and being part of the team. It delivered those, but it's funny. If you were really to push me, I think some of the stuff I did with the environment, working, and again, not on my own, working with Fife Coast and Countryside Trust, and in particular Randall Strachan and Robbie Blythe, and we've actually, developed the dunes along the West Sands. It's, we're pretty dodgy at one time, and there wasn't a lot of sand and dunes left there, and now they're looking so healthy and things like that. So, yeah, I think that kind of stuff as much as anything.
And that's very noticeable. If you, when the tide is out and you're able to kind of look over the edge, you can see the amount of work that's been done to prohibit the erosion, and that's fantastic work.
I think I'm pretty proud of doing that, really.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I think the other thing that you may not recognize is the impact that you've had on the lives of others, people that worked for you, where you got them to perform at levels they didn't recognize they could perform at. I had a boss like that he was a tough guy to work for, but he raised my performance dramatically by giving me expectations that were very difficult to meet. And it made me a better employee and a better person. And I know you touched the lives of a lot of people. And, for those years, well, practically the entire time that I've been going over there, you've touched the old course or the courses that I played on. And I guess I should be saying thank you for having the courses in such wonderful nick every time I've played there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I did love working with, we had a lot of seasonal staff, summer staff every year. And most of them were all greenkeepers, and they were coming from around the world. And I loved working with them and encouraging them. And they were easy because they travelled across to St Andrews to learn, and they were wanting to learn. So they were an easy thing, easy group to help. But there was also a lot of few permanent staff who, sometimes I felt I chased them out of St Andrews, but they needed to leave to develop their career, and there's quite a few of them stayed too long in St Andrews and just got into a sort of habit and a rut.
Right.
Whereas the ones that left, and a lot of them have done really well for themselves. And that's
in your book, I love the story. I think that you brought some young women over from Poland, correct?
Oh yeah, Estonia mostly,
and at least one of them became a full-time greenkeeper, correct?
Yeah, she did actually. She just left about 4 months ago. But yeah, there's another one now. She's been with us for a long time, and she's not qualified, but she's now working as a greenkeeper. So yeah, but that was a fun time, yeah, for more ways than one.
Well, yeah, but I think what was interesting was that people weren't particularly happy with your decision to bring them over, and a couple of them performed so well that they became full-time employees, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Gordon, it has been an honor and a privilege to have you on today. I was thrilled to get the opportunity to meet with you and to have you on the Travel Royally podcast. It's really been wonderful, and I know all of our listeners are going to enjoy hearing your perspectives on golf and your time at St Andrews and Fraserburgh. So, thank you very much for being part of our podcast.
Well, not at all. Thanks very much for inviting me on. It's been good fun, and once I'm going to grab something to eat, and I might go and play a few holes this afternoon.
There you go. Play Murray. Have fun.
Or I might go for a swim.
Yeah.
I do have a wetsuit.
I was going to say you're going to need a wetsuit, right?
Yeah, I'm not going in without a wetsuit on.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Gordon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.